Okay, Adam is gone.
Yes, yes.
Ryan is gone.
Yes, yes.
The boss hasn't been around for months.
No one knows where he is.
There's no one to stop us. We should do a Final Fantasy episode.
Finally, let's do it.
Hello, boys!
Oh, no, you don't. Hello and welcome to the Retro Odyssey podcast. I'm Steven. We're here with my co-host Matt. How's it going?
Not bad, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's been busy, but that's kind of, it's kind of the state everywhere.
Yep. My shop is already gearing up for Christmas. We already have Christmas cakes, and they're not on sale yet, but they are in the warehouse.
Yeah, my job does. I mean, I work in a factory, and a lot of our customers are like they need these parts continuously. So we don't really have seasons, which on the bright side means that we have continuous work pretty much all year. The downside being that we have continuous work.
Mm.
But better to have a steady job than one that's dependent on time of year, because Amazon is great, when it's not Prime Day or peak, and then right after peak, a whole bunch of people just go home every day.
Mm.
But yeah, so what have you been playing this month?
Mostly, I've been playing through the new Final Fantasy 14 patch, which is probably one of the biggest patches they've released. You've got the usual several hours worth of new story content. You've also got some significant side quests as well. We have 4 new raid bosses in the raid series, and each player now has their own island sanctuary, which is kind of like a Stardew Valley, kind of almost like its own separate game. It's got like its own inventory and systems, and you are cultivating and developing this really, really big island. So I've been spending a lot of time on that.
Oh, okay.
And the story is really heating up, and the raids are great. The music in this new raid is fantastic. Although where the story is going, I really need to start playing Final Fantasy IV at some point, because it is tying quite a lot into characters from that. So I need to go and play 4.
I'm surprised 4 wasn't more heavily featured in Endwalker itself.
Parts of it kind of thematically was similar.
Oh, okay, kind of like the Crystal Tower being in Realm Reborn's patch.
Yeah, but okay. But now we've got like actual major characters from Final Fantasy IV making an appearance. So
actual characters. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I really want to get into that.
I mean, it's a good one.
Yeah, I've only done like the first hour or so.
I've never finished it, but I've started it a few times. From what I understand, it's one of the more compelling character focused games. I've seen some of it, but there's a reason it's one of the few that was brought over before 7.
Yeah, to Western markets, yeah. And it really popularized like the Dragoon as well.
Oh yeah.
Like everyone knows who like Kane is.
Mm-hmm.
And even in early Final Fantasy 14, like Astinian's armor is Kane's armor from
Yeah,
4.
it's just Kane.
Yeah. It's been a really, really kind of like content heavy patch. And I've still got like pretty much all the side content stuff to do. Mostly been sorting out my island. But aside from that, I mentioned last month that I was playing through this Tormented Souls, which is like a survival horror in the vein of Resident Evil, Silent Hill, that kind of thing. I did finally finish it. And yeah, it was overtuned on the difficulty wise. I feel you barely get any ammo, you barely get any healing items or save items, and I had to Google the solution to every single puzzle because it was just really, really, really obtuse puzzles. So I had to rely like really heavily on a guide, which isn't great to be honest. Gameplay wise, outside of that, it was fine, but I don't know that I would play a sequel if it has the same kind of like difficulty as the original.
Right. It's because I remember when y'all were talking about it, it was like it wasn't quite like Resident Evil, but it was kind of in that same ballpark. It's just interesting that the puzzles would be that much harder.
Oh yeah, they are. I mean, if you like Google some of the puzzles, you'll kind of see what I mean. Really, really out of the box thinking needed for those puzzles there, and yeah, just I'm not smart enough to kind of like figure out those puzzles on my own. So I ended up having to check each and every one. I was also disappointed that after finishing the game, the end cutscene is about 5 seconds long. Then it goes straight to credits, and that's it.
Oh, okay, wow.
Like I understand that I didn't get like the best ending, but playing through all of that and getting like 5 seconds, literally, it's the character walking out the building and saying a line. That's all it is.
That just feels antagonistic.
Yeah, so I was thinking, is there more? But no, after the credits, it was just a result screen.
That's just mean.
So yeah, I probably wouldn't play a sequel. At least I didn't pay much for it. I paid like £8 in a sale. So
right. I mean, it's not like you spent $60 on this.
No. But what have you been playing?
I have actually started dipping back into Vampire Survivors. I still don't think I've unlocked any of the new characters, but I mean, I haven't. I've only had a few runs since I started playing it again. I've also been playing a lot of Marvel Spider-Man. Going back through that on New Game Plus, just to finish out those achievements. Probably try out Miles Morales when I'm finished, since I can access them both through PlayStation Plus. As I did end up signing up for the PS Plus Extra, I think it is.
Yeah.
It's the middle one, because the top level didn't really have anything that I felt I needed, but I might check out some stuff on there. But other than that, I booted up Mass Effect a couple of times to test out that Defender controller that I talked about last time. because I figured that was Mass Effect on PS3 was a good game to test that with, and it works great. The triggers feel good for a shooter, so I shouldn't have any problems with those. I actually don't think I played a lot of Fire Emblem this month. I meant to, but but I didn't.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not sure if I played any Stranger of Paradise either. I haven't had as much time this month. I've been doing some extra work on the weekends and had a little less time for games. And then obviously, the games for this episode. I do still need to get back to Stranger of Paradise because I do like the story is starting to look like it's going to be just nonsense and
Yeah.
not like the wacky nonsense of some of the other games, more like the time travel out of nowhere from the first game, which is, I mean, it's on point because it's, being very evocative of the first game. But the base gameplay, the job system, I mean, even the equipment system to a degree is like really engaging for me. So, when I do get to play it, I'm still enjoying it. I don't think everyone's gonna like it. I think it just happens to tick exactly the right boxes for me.
I enjoyed like what I played in the demo. It was on like the easiest difficulty, but because
Right.
I'm really not into that Souls-like kind of game, because they're a bit too hard for me. But yeah, I stuck it down to easy, and I was enjoying myself. But I'm still a bit iffy about some of the anachronistic details, like your main character just starts playing Limp Bizkit on his iPod at one point, which just seems really out of place.
Well, I want to say it's implied that he's like ripped from present times or something like that.
Hmm.
But I'm not. I may be wrong about that, but I think that's the implication early on. Because I mean, all of the characters, or at least the three you start with, look like they're from more modern times based on their clothing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's a fun game. I'll get back to it and probably pick up the DLC here soon. I think it's already out.
Yeah, I've seen adverts for the DLC. I'm pretty sure it's out. But once that game hits a deep discount, I will probably pick that up.
Yeah, I actually I'm glad I paid full price for this one. Like I normally don't say that, but uh, I would much rather see more of this than Chocobo GP.
Yes.
And it's weird saying that because a year ago my opinion was flipped. I was much more excited for Chocobo GP. But I would rather see the company do more weird stuff that's taking risks and trying new things with the IP than a basically a vessel for microtransactions.
Yeah, just taking an old game and just shoving real money stuff into it.
Just taking the piss, really.
Mm.
Yeah, so
I never went back to that after the first time I played it.
So yeah, I did not buy it. I have only played the demo. But I am glad that I paid full price for Stranger of Paradise because for me it's definitely worth it because I'm gonna get a lot out of it. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna try to get back to that. I should get back to Final Fantasy 14. I just gotta, number one, buy more time. Number two, be in a kind of the right mood to get back into it.
I just want you to finish it for purely selfish reasons because I want to talk to you about the story. But yeah, because you're not particularly far away from like my favorite scene in the entire game.
Oh, is that towards the end of Shadowbringers?
Yes, before you
Okay.
hit the patch content. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I am looking forward to seeing where this goes, especially given how much since I've heard so much about Shadowbringers and so many good things about Endwalker. Because I think I don't remember if it was you or somebody else that said that Shadowbringers is some of the best Final Fantasy content out there and maybe one of the best stories in gaming, period.
I mean, I have said that at some point, I'm sure.
Okay.
And Endwalker kind of takes that to the next level as well.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. I just gotta get back to it, which I should be able to here soon. But yeah, I think if that's all we got, we do have a few news items we can talk about.
Yeah, we do. This is a bit of a weird one. With Sega having quite a lot of success with the two Sonic movies and the third one on the way, they are now looking to make movies based on Comic Zone and Space Channel 5, which are two very strange games to actually want to make movies out of. Like, I'm sure you could do good things with like Altered Beast. Golden Axe you could probably get like a decent fantasy game out of, but Space Channel 5 is a dance sim. Comic Zone is about a guy jumping in and out of comic book panels, I believe. And it just seems really weird Sega properties to make movies out of.
Yeah, it does.
But they've already got screenwriters and producers on board for both projects. And like I said, they are currently doing a third Sonic movie. So, yeah, just a really, really odd choice.
Yeah, that is kind of weird.
But I guess with comic book movies being a big thing at the minute, Comic Zone will probably make more sense than Space Channel 5.
It would be interesting to see a quote unquote comic book movie that is not just taking characters from a comic and putting them on screen, but actually making a movie out of the comic books more as a concept. That I feel like there's a lot you can do with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've ever read anything that Grant Morrison has written for DC Comics. He has toyed a lot with the idea of real life and comic books kind of like merging, and like his characters finding out that they're fictional and stuff like that, and a lot of like really weird stuff like that.
Yeah, like I've seen something similar done in cartoons before, but I mean it's cartoons, so it's it's a much closer medium, much easier to do that with.
And of course, there's Last Action Hero as well, which is essentially the same kind of concept.
Yeah, that I forgot about that. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I'm curious what they could do with the other one, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So what else have we got? We have a new handheld coming from Evercade. They did the Evercade XP, the Evercade VS Plus, which was the console version of the handheld, and now they are doing Evercade EXP, which is like an upgraded version of the handheld, and it's going to have a bunch of Capcom games built into it. So you're going to get 1942, 1943, 1944, Bionic Commando, Captain Commando, Commando, Final Fight, Forgotten Worlds, Ghouls and Ghosts, Legendary Wings, Mercs, Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, Strider, Vulgus, Mega Man 2, Mega Man X, and Breath of Fire.
Nice.
Which is a nice selection. Solid selection of games. You've got a handful of fighters, handful of shooters, handful of platformers.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
And this will be the first time that the Evercade has actually had something built in. They usually come with a cartridge with a bunch of games on, but
Mm,
yeah, this is the first time they've actually had something built in, like as stock on the system.
mm,
Honestly, I've got the console version, the Evercade VS, and it's kind of gathering dust. To be honest, I've not really played it. I've got two cartridges for it. None of the games on there are particularly massively my kind of thing, but that's just the cartridges that I got with it. I'm sure if I had a few more cartridges, I'd play it a lot more.
right.
But it is definitely an interesting concept. You just have a load of officially licensed cartridges, compilations, and you can pick and choose which ones you want.
Right.
It's kind of like emulation, but official emulation.
Right. I know. I feel like I still think the system that's similar that would be better for me is the Polymega, just because
Mm,
like I still have all that physical media that I can then stick in the system and digitize.
yeah,
But I mean, yeah, I mean this is still a it's still a good product if it fits what you're looking for.
yeah, and it's always nice to have stuff like this on handheld as well.
Oh yeah, that's it's one of the best things about the Steam Deck is it's handheld and you can do so much with it.
We do have a release date of November 24th, so that's a couple months out. Um, One more news story I have is this is purely rumor and leak, but the person who leaked this has been kind of like proven right in the past. But apparently, a new Star Fox game and animated series are actually in production to come to Nintendo Switch. Now, it's not being first party developed. It's being third party developed with Nintendo keeping a very like close eye on it.
Interesting.
But yeah, this is something that is apparently in development,
Hmm.
and we don't know a hell of a lot more than that.
Right.
But this guy has been right in the past about leaks.
That's very interesting because like I mean I know it seems like they don't care about Star Fox, but it is one of their like core IPs. It's surprising they would just hand it off like that. But then again, they handed off Metroid for the Prime series, and that turned out great. So,
And Donkey Kong for Super Nintendo,
oh yeah,
which
to the same studio,
which Rare did, yeah.
yeah, and then gave it to Retro for the Returns games, which sold decently. So,
So yeah, could be interesting, but that is literally all of the information that we know at the moment.
I mean, it'll probably be better than Star Fox Zero,
Well, it'd have to be, wouldn't it?
right?
I mean that's the game that essentially killed the franchise. I mean that was like 7 years ago,
Yeah,
um, and there's been nothing since apart from Fox being in Smash.
and Star Fox 2 actually being officially released in the SNES Classic.
Yeah, which I've still not played.
It's it's okay. Um, Definitely a different kind of game, but eh.
I believe you had a story about our favorite video game publisher.
I mean, one of them. Uh, so Konami has been in the news this past week, and not for being shitheads, which is odd for them. It's kind of a bold new strategy for them. Uh, so they have announced that a bunch of their games that were delisted and unavailable for purchase are going to be coming back to digital storefronts. So the first thing they've announced is the Metal Gear Solid games are going to be coming back to digital storefronts. I'm guessing it's going to be Steam and maybe Epic Game Store, but the original announcement was on the official Konami Twitter and Instagram. And it says, attention Konami fans, for the first time ever, all the classic games you love and the new games you're waiting for are coming to the official Konami shop as Steam digital downloads. 23 games, 18 DLCs. Are you ready to play? And then there were some hashtags following that up, and they were Castlevania, Silent Hill, Bomberman, Getsu Fumaden, Metal Gear, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I remember when I heard about this, I was like, Getsu Fumaden, really?
Well, it did have that remake recently.
That's right, it did have that. So that was announced about a week ago. And then there was another announcement put out that they were going to reveal an unknown game in a, quote, world-loved franchise at Tokyo Game Show this year, which is happening this month, the 15th to the 18th. So here in a couple of weeks. So the schedule doesn't say what the game is. The only detail that we have is that voice actor Yuki Kaji will be the one announcing it on stage. I mean, and Kaji's done a lot of voice acting work. Just what's listed here is GTA 5, Final Fantasy 13, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Like he's got a pretty big portfolio. But what's important is that he's appeared in 3 Konami games. One game called Terror of the Stratus that was Japan exclusive, and the other 2 are games in the Suikoden franchise. So a lot of people think this new game is going to be a Suikoden game. And when we talked about this, you mentioned the other option would be Silent Hill.
Yeah.
But those rumors of that have kind of been out for a little bit. I'm definitely interested to see it because I've got a lot of friends that are really, really into Suikoden. So if that if they A, brought those games back to storefronts, and B, put out a new one, I know several people that would be very happy. And it would actually fit because there was a Kickstarter, I think it was a couple of years ago now, for a game that's basically Suikoden. It's Elyuden Chronicles, something like that. And that game is not that far from coming out. And just like Capcom before, Capcom let Mighty Number 9 come out and then release Mega Man 11. So it would kind of make sense for them to release Suikoden now.
Looking at this, there were kind of like 5 mainline entries into the series.
Mm-hmm.
So if they are not currently available to buy somewhere, it would definitely be a plus to get access to those.
Yeah, so I think I don't remember because I have the first 4 games through PlayStation Network. Because the Suikoden games are ridiculously expensive to get physical copies of. I mean, the PS2 games, 3, 4, and 5, will regularly go for $300 to $500.
Wow.
We're talking Earthbound money here. That is insane. I've basically given up on playing Suikoden 5 because it's not available through PSN, and there is no way in hell I'm going to get a physical copy of that. I have all the digital copies. I intend to start them at some point, but if they brought them to Steam, that would be great, because that would number one give them a whole bunch of sales from people that love the series and no longer have the original games. And number 2, let them introduce the series to a whole bunch of new people. That would be a great move for them. I don't know. I'm hoping that's what it is. even if just for seeing another series like that, and also if it makes it easier to get a hold of the last one.
Yeah, because I mean, in terms of kind of like RPG series, this is one that has never really been on my radar. But if they were available and easier to get, I'd definitely take a look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
I mean,
I was I didn't know that they'd mentioned anything about Silent Hill coming to digital. Did they say which ones?
no, literally, it was just a list of hashtags after the tweet, just basically giving a hint at what older franchises they were going to be bringing back.
Because two onwards were released on PC. Well, 2, 3, 4, Homecoming, and Downfall, I believe, were released on PC. But only 4 is currently available digitally. That's
Right.
on GOG.
It's Silent Hill that the HD collection was basically hacked together because they lost the original code, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm almost wondering, like, I would imagine if we see the games that are on the HD collection, it'll probably be that version.
I hope not. I mean, if they can just take the original PC versions
Mhm.
and put them on there, maybe with some patches just to make sure that they're working fully. I would absolutely take that.
It's interesting they mentioned Castlevania because like most of the series is available digitally. I mean, maybe it's not all on PC, but
I mean, it's pretty much all available on console
yeah,
because
because
they've released those two massive collections. Well, no, three even.
yeah,
You've got a collection of all the classic ones. You've got a collection of Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night, and you've got the collection of the GBA ones as well.
yeah. So really, all you're missing is the DS and the 3D ones,
Mm.
which are the 3D ones. You can purchase all of them on at least on Xbox. Well, the Lords of Shadow. I don't
Yeah,
think
they're
the
on
P.
they're on Steam as well and
Okay,
PlayStation.
I'm not sure about the PS2 games, but yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see what they do with this. I mean, like they've announced Metal Gear Solid games are coming back, but nothing else has been really confirmed.
Yeah, because they already have that like Metal Gear Solid HD collection, which was really well
Yeah,
received.
yeah. I was lucky enough to be able to track down a physical copy of that. That is a really good collection. I mean, how they could just release that. But yeah, so that's all I have for news. Uh, so I think if that's all we've got, then we can take a quick break and move on to our topic for the episode.
Okay, we can do.
All right, so our topic this time is one that I'm sure everyone listening saw coming. We were going to do this eventually. We're talking about Final Fantasy games, and obviously this isn't going to be the last time we talk about them. But for this one, we decided to, we're still just doing two of them, and we decided to look at different areas of the Final Fantasy IP. So the first game we're talking about is Final Fantasy Tactics, which originally came out in 1997 for the PlayStation. I want to say it was like right around the time that 7 came out.
This came out in '97. Yeah, so
Uh,
seven came out on January 31st. and this came out in Japan June 20th, and in America it came out January 28th, 98.
Yeah. Okay. So this Tactics, from what I understand, it was very well received at launch, and it kind of launched a side series for Final Fantasy. You have the original Tactics, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, Tactics Advance A2, and then there was a port. There's been a couple of ports of the original Tactics, most notably the PSP version, Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions. I've been hearing about this game for a long time, but I hadn't actually played it yet. I have every version of it, but I've got some friends that are very, very into this game. Like, they say this is the best Final Fantasy game, hands down. Yeah, this was my first time playing it, and I actually did enjoy it. I wasn't able to get terribly far into it just because of time constraints, but I actually found it pretty engaging, and I think one of the things that I enjoyed most was the job system, and it was like one of the elements I like so much about Stranger of Paradise, in that the jobs, the way you unlock the jobs, they're kind of, building and flowing into each other. So, like, you can level up your white mage and your black mage, and once you get them both to a certain level, you unlock the time mage, that kind of thing. And it allows you to build a character in a particular way, so that this person is good at physical fighting, this person is good at magic, and it allows you to, within the given stats, it allows you to kind of build your own version of those characters. And then, I've talked before about how much I enjoy Fire Emblem, so a tactical game is kind of right up my alley. So it's kind of a shame that I hadn't played this before, but I know you felt a little bit differently. Oh, and we should mention I played the original PlayStation version and a little bit of a fan mod, and you played the PSP version, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I've never been that much into tactical RPGs, like strategy games like that. There's a couple I like. Red Alert and Warcraft 3 come to mind. But generally, it's not really my kind of genre. And this didn't grab me. I kind of found it a little bit overwhelming. There are quite a lot of different systems, and the game does put you kind of like right into the thick of it, more or less. There is a lengthy tutorial section, but it is literally just a text dump.
Yeah.
And I've read it and it just bounced off, essentially. So I was struggling quite a bit. I don't have like a very like strategic kind of mind for these kind of games. I got through the opening chapter. I think it's called Chapter 0, something like that. The prologue.
The one where you're defending the church?
Yeah. Mainly because the AI knew what they were doing.
Right, and you only have control of one character.
Yes. So I got through that. Went into the Chapter 1 battle, and I didn't really know how to work the party grid. You get a party grid where you choose party members at the start of like each battle.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't add anyone to that. I didn't really know how that whole system worked. So I went into the battle with just two people, myself and Delita, who is the character that you're playing with, that's controlled by the AI. And I was thinking for a while, like, why am I getting overrun? There's like two of us and there's like five enemies.
Mm.
And I played through like a few matches of that, and I was like, something really isn't right here. So I ended up having to look on YouTube for a tutorial, and I found out, oh, you are actually meant to have six people. Um, well, no, five rather. That you can like build your party on that party screen,
Mm.
and I just didn't know how to work that, how to put people kind of like in the party. Um, so once I actually did that, I was able to get through the battle on like my second try. It was still really difficult.
Mm.
Um, I couldn't really tell which characters were good or not because some people are kind of like higher in certain stats than others, and some people seem to have a lot of bravery. Some people seem to have a lot of faith. I didn't really know what those meant. But I got to the chapter 2 battle, and I was just beating my head against a brick wall. There are two objectives that you can choose from in that chapter 2 battle. You can choose to just kill all the enemies, or you can choose to save this one guy that's like taken hostage. I tried them both, and I got my ass just handed to me. Trying to do anything on chapter 2, and maybe that was down to like the party mechanics, but I feel the gameplay was kind of like a stumbling block for me.
Mm.
I just could not get on with the gameplay. I didn't really like the isometric style, and even you can turn the camera around to look at it from like four different angles. But even then, I didn't feel like I was getting a proper decent view of the battlefield, and a lot of the abilities, like the magic abilities, I didn't know what they did, and I don't know the best party composition to have, and the game kind of does put you in at the deep end, and so I ended up bouncing off on chapter 2, unfortunately, and I can't imagine I'll go back.
Right. Yeah, and I will say that to like listeners, when we say there's a tutorial section, there is a menu option on the main menu that says tutorial, and it's just pages and pages and pages of text and menus to navigate through. Um, so yeah, that like I had a little bit of a head start because I've like I think I don't remember if I've seen it played, but I knew some things going in. Um, like it was pretty easy to for me to come to grips with the job system. But yeah, it doesn't explain itself well, and it can be really challenging because, like you said, you're basically starting at like it doesn't hold anything back after that first fight. The AI does feel like it's trying to crush you.
Yeah, it expects you to know what you're doing like from the start.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does have that difficulty, and I also found the story practically incomprehensible.
Hmm.
Like people complain about Final Fantasy 13 dropping you in at the deep end story wise, um, but this I had no idea what was going on. At least Final Fantasy 13 has like a glossary that you can look up all the terms and that you're using.
Right.
But this story just seems so convoluted, and it's not told in a linear way. Because the very first start of the game, the prologue actually happens after chapter 1.
Right.
So you're kind of like going backwards and forth, telling this really convoluted story about two different wars that are happening.
Yeah, because it's kind of like Star Wars where they're like, oh, the land just recovered from this war, and now a new war is starting because of this reason. Um, but yeah, it does not explain itself well.
one good thing that kind of like came from this game is the setting, which span off into several different titles. I mean, you mentioned the different versions of Tactics that that like take place here,
Mhm.
but Vagrant Story, which is like not a Final Fantasy game, also takes place in the same world of Ivalice, and Final Fantasy 12 as well,
Yes.
which came out like quite a bit later, also takes place in this world,
Mhm.
and also Final Fantasy 14 has a raid series based on this as well, though it's kind of like their own version of Ivalice. It's not like the same one, but Tactics, Vagrant Story, and 12 all take place in like the same universe.
Yeah, which is a really cool thing, and I'm honestly surprised they haven't done it more often.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that the reason the PSP version came about, the War of the Lions, that was to tie in with the release of 12,
Yeah,
because that was released like 1 year after 12 came out,
mhm. Yeah, that would make sense.
and it was like titled as part of this Ivalice Alliance project.
Oh yeah,
Um, that they were kind of like building, kind of like you've got with all the Final Fantasy VII games. You know, you've got this whole kind of like I forget what they call it. They've got a
the
name for it, haven't they?
the compilation of Final Fantasy VII.
Yes, yeah, that's the one. So this Ivalice Alliance project is kind of like similar kind of thing for that.
Yeah, just
And
like the Fabula Nova Crystallis, which was 13, Type 0 and 15.
yeah, until they changed 15.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So it's nice that this kind of like spun off into some slightly more coherent games.
Mhm.
Because I've played like first few hours of Final Fantasy 12, and it's a lot easier to understand than this is.
Right. I like I said, I did enjoy it. I will definitely be going back to it. One of the interesting things I discovered was when I was playing this, I started on my PS3 with my disc and digital copy, and then I put it on my Steam Deck, and then found out I could plug my Steam Deck into my TV using my third party Switch dock, thus making that like even better. But yeah, Tactics itself is, I mean, it's definitely a game that if it's not your kind of thing, you're just not gonna get much out of it. But if you enjoy these kind of tactical battle games, if you enjoy the a lot of these specific Final Fantasy flavors of that kind of thing, then I think people will really enjoy this. And so I know the digital version was on PSN as of last year. I don't know if it still is.
It does not appear to be. I'm not actually seeing a PSN page for it.
Okay, yeah, because it was originally released as part of the PS1 Classics thing, um, but I know the PSN store has been getting cut back a lot. You can still find physical copies of the original PlayStation game or the PSP port. I think there is a mobile port as well for like $12. So there are still ways to play this game. It's just not as easy as it was.
Yeah, I mean, there is something else I wanted to mention as well before we tie up with this one. I found out that Cloud is a secret unlockable character.
Yes, I didn't get that far, but yeah, you can unlock Cloud like towards the end of the game.
You've got to do this convoluted series of back and forth things to like unlock him. he kind of like gets pulled from his world into this one, and yeah, I mean, I didn't do it myself. I saw a video of it, but yeah. It's interesting that it's in there.
Yeah, I did read that he starts at level 1, where your
Yes,
characters are like level 50 at that point. So
so he's essentially useless.
yeah, I guess the takeaway is if you like tactical games, try it out. If you don't, maybe look it up before you spend money on it. It's definitely good to have a different type of Final Fantasy game,
Yeah,
and I hope that we see some more of these in the future. So
yeah,
I
definitely.
so I think we'll go ahead and wrap that up and take a short break and come back with our second game.
Okay.
So, listener, I'm going to ask you to buckle up because the second game we're talking about is Final Fantasy X, which, if you're listening to this, if you know anything about Final Fantasy, even if you don't know anything about Final Fantasy, you know about Final Fantasy X. In my estimation, and I could be wrong on this, Final Fantasy X is the last time that almost the entire fan base was unified in saying a game was good. I
Yeah, it
think
probably was.
I think the closest we've come since is Final Fantasy XIV, and by its nature of being an MMO, there are some people that will not touch it. So Final Fantasy X is a big one, and this is going to get long. This is also your official spoiler warning. We're going to be talking about the entirety of this game, including the ending and things related to it. So if you haven't played this game yet, I do highly recommend that you play it before you listen to this, because this actually is a story that you should experience fresh. So, I mean, basic details. It was released originally for the PS2 in 2001. It was, I think it was like very, very early for the PS2. Like, I don't think it was quite a launch title, but it was early. And then, of course, it's been re-released with the HD remaster for, PS3, Vita, PS4, Switch, Xbox, PC. So it was a big first step in a couple of ways. It was the first to feature full voice acting, and the graphics obviously had a huge jump from the PS1 to the PS2. I think it specifically calls out going to fully three-dimensional areas. But yeah, this one was big. Now, I didn't play this at launch. I played this probably 4 or 5 years later. I think you just played this for the first time more recently.
Yeah, I mean, it was only through this podcast that I got into Final Fantasy. Um, so I've been trying to work myself through like a bunch of the games. Probably about 2 years ago, I played this, maybe 1.5.
Mm.
Like for the first time, I played the HD version on PS4, which also comes with X2 as well, but I've not played that.
Mm.
So yeah, it was fairly recently that I've played that.
So, what did you think of it? Because I mean, you know, I have a lot of memories of this, but I'm very curious to hear the fresh perspective.
Okay, well, like I said, I've been playing through a bunch of the Final Fantasy games so far. I've played 1, 3, half of 7, 10, 13, and 14. And of all of the single player Final Fantasies that I've played, which is everything except 14 that I've just mentioned, this is by far my favorite. Um, I don't know if it's just because the characters are really likable. The world is kind of like really well fleshed out. It feels lived in. There's a lot of history in this world. That kind of like comes through the gameplay rather than like info dumps. And I just loved my time with it. I mean, there were some frustrating bits, but like once I got the hang of it, I was loving it. The combat system was a bit of a shift from what I was used to. Um, with the you can like manipulate turn orders and stuff like that with certain abilities, and once I actually figured out what the kind of like turn gauge was and how to kind of like work with that and like see who was attacking next and like swapping party members in and out mid battle, it was like a joy to play through the combat and the and like the overworld stuff as well. I really really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and this I might be wrong on this because I haven't gotten too into some of the others, but I believe this is one of the first in the series, at least in the mainline series, to actually have a HUD element on screen that shows you the upcoming turn order. Because I know in Tactics you could open a menu to look at the turn order, um, but I don't think I don't think any of the PS1 games had the turn order on screen.
No, certainly none of the other ones that I've played
Mm.
had it on there. Because I mean, it needed it on there specifically because you can manipulate the turn order, I think.
Right, and
And there's at least one boss fight where you need to know when the enemy is next attacking, so
mm,
that you can kind of like delay that attack.
right. Um, like I know in some of the earlier games, you were technically manipulating the turn order. It was just less direct. It's like, oh, you can cast haste, but you still don't 100% know when people are going to act.
Mm.
Um, but uh, yeah, this game does a lot right, and it, like you said, it feels like a lived-in world, and uh, and I think we're going to end up mentioning 13 a lot in this one, just because the games are kind of similar in a few ways, but one of the big ways they differ is Final Fantasy X tells you a lot about the world through environmental storytelling, through NPCs, and through the actual plot. Whereas a lot of 13's background information and lore is told through the codex.
Yeah, and I think that's probably people's main sticking point because these two games are very similar.
Right.
They're both very linear without a huge amount of exploration until like certain parts later in the game do open up a little bit in both games.
Right.
But in general, you can't really go off the beaten path, which is a major criticism that people level at 13, but seem to forget that 10 did the same thing.
And I think one of the main reasons, I think so. The walking down hallways is the criticism people levy at 13. I think in 13 they looked more like hallways, whereas in 10
Yeah,
it looks like an expansive area that you only have a narrow path to walk down.
yeah, that's fair.
So I think it was the graphical design was part of that. Now, I will say 13 looks a lot prettier.
Well, it's the next generation up, so it's going
It
to.
is.
But
But
yeah,
and that's one of the things that they do share that is kind of, like not even something people argue about is 13 was just like 10 taking the series to the next level in terms of graphics and, the overall presentation, because it was the first one on the new system.
Yeah, I mean, and another similarity as well, like the leveling system, like you have the sphere grid in 10, and you have pretty much exactly the same thing in 13, except it's not, except it's like a 3D grid, and you don't use orbs to level up abilities, you just use XP.
Right.
But it is essentially a 3D version of 10's leveling system.
I think the main difference, and I think one of the reasons people like the sphere grid much more than the Crystarium, is with the sphere grid you are choosing what paths to take. And yes, once, like, a character only has so much, so many spaces on their grid, so there is kind of a set path, but you can, once they get to the end of their grid, or even before that, you can choose to send them to anyone else's grid.
Yeah.
And customize your characters more than you could in 13, which is fair. I really like the sphere grid. I think it is a fantastic leveling system. I have not done the thing where everyone does the entire grid, because that takes way too long. But I like the sphere grid because it's a good visual representation of character growth. So even if you're not someone who will sit there and crunch the numbers yourself, you can look at the grid and see how far your character has come, and see the improvements that have been made, and see where they're going, and know, okay, if I get a little bit more experience in this area, I can get to these next abilities. I like that. I like being able to go to other grids so that you can get your bases more fully covered with the characters that you have. I think it's a very good system, and I like, on the one hand, I would have liked to have seen more games with it, but on the other, I would not trade the gesture system for anything.
Mm.
But we'll get into that when we talk about 10.2. But what do you think about the voice acting? Because this was, like I said, this was the first one with full voice acting, and I think for the most part it was very successful. There's a few weird moments that have turned into memes, but overall I think it was very well done.
Yeah, I mean, I liked pretty much all the voice acting. One thing that particular laughing meme doesn't kind of like take into account is, people say, oh, it sounds like a forced laugh. It's like, yes, it is a forced laugh. That's the point of the scene.
Right.
And then they laugh more naturally after they've done it.
Right.
The point of the scene is that they are forcing a laugh to kind of like try to cheer themselves up.
Yeah, because they're going through some shit.
Yeah. But yeah, in general, the voice acting, fantastic throughout. It was a little off-putting at first when you meet Waka, because I was like, that sounds like Bender. And yeah, it is John DiMaggio who does the voice of Bender, just doing a Caribbean accent for some reason. But yeah,
weird.
It is. But yeah, I don't think there was like a bad central performance in the game in terms of voice acting.
No, I don't think there is. And I think when they were designing the game, when they were setting up the story and the dialogue, they really played to that strength of having voice dialogue. One of the best examples of this I can think of is when you're going in when you're in the end game, and Orin gives a speech before fighting Lady Unalesca. That speech would not be nearly as effective if it was text boxes like in the previous games. That speech is like, it was transformative for me when I played it, and it's still something I think about a lot. It would not have that impact if it wasn't voiced.
Yeah, and that goes for a lot of the emotional scenes as well, of which there are quite a few.
Right. And it's just they constructed everything so well, and they really were trying to push Final Fantasy to the next level, and they absolutely succeeded. Um, the story is deep, and you learn so much about these characters, and you can empathize with a lot of, well, you can empathize with some of what they're going through. This is a fantasy game, but you feel the emotions that they want you to feel, which is also boosted by Nobuo Uematsu. Like, damn.
The music is just beautiful.
Yeah, and I think this was the first one that did have a couple of other composers, but I mean, Nobuo Uematsu was still the primary composer. And I mean, yes, almost all Final Fantasy music is amazing. This one really, really hit well. This one was incredible.
Yeah, like the Zanakin theme, Bevel theme, Song of the Faith,
Hmm.
all kind of like immediately jump to mind when I kind of like think about this game.
Yeah, like, and it's songs that stick with you. Like, like I said, I played this game quite a while ago, and then like I've replayed parts of it recently, even outside of preparing for this episode, and you know I could still remember the Hymn of the Faith even when I hadn't played it for years, because it's just that the way that is set up and the role it plays in the game is so impactful that it sticks with you.
Yeah, because I mean, it takes place in like the final boss fight as well. Like
Right.
it's there as a story point.
Right. And like I said, this is a I want to say this is a more ambitious story than they had done previously. I think there's you can make arguments, but I think this is definitely one that makes you think and makes you feel things.
Yeah,
Um, Especially having the time travel element, because like time travel has been part of the series since its beginning, but it's been used sparingly. And I think the core, I think it being part of the conceit of this game, part of the base concept, uh, does enhance things. And I think it's actually a very good way of introducing the player to Spira, because Titus has all these questions about this world he suddenly found himself in, and so do we, because if we haven't played this game, we don't know anything.
mm.
So it's in from what I can recall, it is one of the better ways of doing this type of story where people are explaining things to the main character because they're new and don't know things, which also means they're explaining to the player. I think that's done really well.
Yeah. I mean, regarding the time travel thing, I mean, parts of it are time travel. A lot of it is dreams of the faith.
Right.
Um, I think time travel initially comes into play when Auron and Jack travel to Spira,
Hmm.
but I think after that, it's all kind of like dreams of the faith that are kind of like keeping Xanakund in place, if
Right,
I'm not
but
mistaken.
yes, but the you are led to believe in the beginning that Titus is time traveling.
Yes.
And there is, like you said, actual time travel, and it is still core to the concept of the game. But I mean, what did you think? I mean, this was this was one of your earlier Final Fantasies, wasn't it?
Yes, I did this. I did one first, then
Hmm.
I did 13, then I did this.
Okay.
I believe. So, like I said, it was one of my earlier experiences, but it is still at the top, like in terms of the single player games.
Mm.
Um, None of the other ones have come close to beating it. Well, 7 kind of comes close, but this is absolutely, to me, like the pinnacle of what the series can do.
And there's a lot of people that agree with you. I mean, like I said at the top, this is, I believe, the last time that pretty much everyone agreed that the game was good. Um, Ever since we've had, you know, I mean, people didn't like 12 changing the combat system. People didn't like 13 for a variety of reasons. You know, there's a lot of people that don't like 15 being as modern as it is. And I mean, even the sequel, which is another thing 10 does for the first time in the series, is have a direct sequel. A lot of people don't like that. Now, the reasons for not liking 10.2 are usually not as valid as the reasons for not liking the other ones. But again, we'll get into that another time.
But yeah, as far as the base game goes, yeah, it is pretty much universally loved. And the HD version as well, like, looks fantastic. They really have like spruced it up quite a bit,
Yes.
with both the in-game graphics and the cutscenes. Um, Thankfully, they didn't do what Silent Hill 2 did and change the voice acting. Because that's also iconic.
Well, and that's, I guess that means Square is, more competent as a company than Konami,
Oh, way more.
which go figure, although, we'll see how their NFT gamble plays out. Oh, wait. Um, so one of the things that 10 is known for is being that next step up, but also bringing slight variations to uh, traditional aspects of the games. Uh, One of the big examples is the limit break system being redone into overdrives. The ATB system being changed into the continuous time battle, um,
Something like that.
conditional turn-based battle, um, and then the sphere grid being, I think a pretty new setup. So you played two of the ones that came before this, and then 13. Um, what did you think about the way it does some of those traditional Final Fantasy elements and the way it, I guess you could say, modernized them?
The games I played before didn't have limit breaks. Like one and three don't have limit breaks. Seven does. Like I
Seven
said, I
does.
played half of that. Um, I liked most aspects of the overdrive system. I struggled with some of the button prompts you've got to press to get some of the overdrives to work. Like Tidus's, you've got to like stop the curse like in the middle of this moving
Right.
thing, and I struggled with that. I could almost never get it in the right place, and I'd like waste the overdrive. I think Whackers I had trouble with as well.
I always struggled with the element reels.
Yeah, and most of the other ones were fine, because you didn't like have the timing aspect of having to get this like perfect timing on it.
Right.
So you do find yourself sometimes wasting an overdrive, which can really piss you off.
Mm.
And that's one thing that I kind of like wish that they'd done away with. Um, but other than that, yeah, it's a good system. In terms of the other things that have come from like previous games, like say it is the ATB system evolved into kind of like this system, which it shows you your turn order. You know who's going to attack next. You know when the enemy is going to attack. You can plan battles better
Right.
than you could in previous games. And like I said, there is one boss fight where you're on an airship and you need to move it backwards and forwards to avoid an enemy attack, and it is crucial that you know when the enemy is going to attack, or otherwise it's going to be game over.
Right.
So that was definitely like an improvement on previous games, and just general improvements all around.
What did you think about the summons? Because
So
that's
the summons is kind of like, obviously the previous games, especially 7, you could summon on any character. On this game in particular, they are limited just to Yuna, and that ties in with the story as well because she is a summoner, and she is the person going on this quest. We're just accompanying her, and she needs to gain like all these summons in order to complete her quest. So it is only her that you can use them on. I really enjoyed how they worked, how they kind of like built up. You go through kind of like battle with them, and depending on how much damage they take, they will go into kind of like their own overdrive mode, and you can then summon them to kind of like do bigger attacks and stuff like that. And it was one of the most interesting parts of the battle system for me, the summon.
And I can say before playing 10, the ones I had played the most were 6 and 7, where in those you have summons, but you're basically summoning them for a single attack. And some of the summons can do different things. Like, for example, Odin in 7 has 2 attacks that he can do. But for the most part, it was just, this is the attack they're going to do. You're summoning them for this attack. Whereas this one, being able to control what the summoned creature does, I think was, I mean, at the time it was a big deal, at least from my perspective.
And and some of those attacks, they can like buff and debuff as well.
Yes.
So there is like an additional strategic element to getting a certain summon out and doing a certain attack with that summon.
And like you said, the summons having their own overdrive also is a big part of it, because their overdrives don't require any additional inputs. So it's something you can count on. And then I believe Grand Summon, Yuna's overdrive, brings them out with their overdrive ready.
Yes.
So it, like you said, it adds another element. And I think, I mean, obviously we've seen these characters since, but seeing the Final Fantasy classics, Ifrit, Shiva, Bahamut, seeing them in this form was great. Like, I know, we've seen them in later games where they look better, but at the time this looked amazing.
Yeah. And the animations as well, like you can turn on shorter animations, which after a few times you are going to want to do, but right. Like the full length summoning animation for each of these is just fantastic, and their overdrive animations as well. I mean, the overdrives are really powerful attacks, and they look like really powerful attacks when they do them.
Right. And I like that, number one, like they start out seeming like just, oh, this is the lightning one, this is the fire one. But then, like you said, there's also, some of them have debuffs, some of them have buffs, some of them have other things you can do. And then you get into the optional Aeons, and they are a big departure, because like the Yojimbo summon, you have to pay him to do anything.
Yeah, and like he can break the game. Just get a shit ton of gil, and he will just mow down bosses for you.
Yeah, exactly.
The Maggot Sisters are a bit different because there's three of them, and
Right.
they then like take turns doing attacks, and they can kind of. I believe it's been a little while, but I believe they can combo attacks as well with each other.
They can. They also like you can make requests for them to do things, but they may not listen.
Ah,
And then their overdrive gives them a combine powers command that they basically join together and do a massive attack. I think it's one of the biggest overdrives in the game. And Anima is like, it's not mechanically as different, but it is narratively a big deal to be able to summon Anima.
yeah, very very sad and tragic story behind Anima.
Yeah, and it's again like this game was so well crafted, and they hit all of those emotional points very well done in that regard. I mean, we talked a little bit about Spira feeling more lived in, and telling its story basically with more subtle details and talking to NPCs. So, what are your feelings on Spira overall as a setting, apart from what we've talked about?
I think it's kind of like it comes across as kind of like a really peaceful, tranquil kind of world. I mean, obviously the appearance of sin kind of like puts that into jeopardy, but it almost seems like they're just existing until the next time that sin comes along, which I wouldn't say gives them a nihilistic outlook, but it's certainly when you're talking to people in kind of like this really bright, peaceful looking world, there is a certain inevitability in their speech that kind of like things are going to get fucked up, but we're going to get over it, and then it'll be fine until the next time things get fucked up.
Right, and it like they do a good job presenting this world as it is a peaceful world that is beset upon by this phenomenon. And like you said, it's not really nihilism, but they do have a kind of acceptance of, we've been, rebuilding after this disaster for 1,000 years. We'll just keep doing that because that's what works. And the idea that it could end permanently is just, completely beyond any of their imaginings, which I mean is, the core, the whole point is, doing what everyone thought couldn't be done. But it's I really like the diversity of the world. I really like how all the different cultures feel, they feel distinct. They feel deep. Like there's, you feel like there's a lot more to learn about these cultures than you get in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it goes a little bit into the kind of like friction between the Faith and the Albed,
Right.
and it does give you kind of like a fair bit of context, but it doesn't really go so deep into the Albed to know kind of like why they are like the way they are, kind of like with the technological advances, and kind of like, because the Faith, the followers of the Faith believe that the Albed with their technological advances are what's causing sin to arrive. But we don't know like why the Albed are super into this technological stuff and why they keep pursuing it. But you get enough context for the story to work.
Right. And like, you have the Guado and the Ronso, and those are societies that they tell us a lot about them, but not everything about them. Especially the the Ronso are not as open with outsiders, and then you get races like the Hypello, who it mostly gets played for a joke with their speech pattern, but that's still like that's a whole race and culture there's there's clearly more there than is being shown on screen, which I really like.
Yeah, and that's I think it's kind of like another way that this game sets itself apart from 13, in that in 13 there would be a massive codex entry on each of these describing like every single little detail.
Right.
And it's good to have a little bit of mystery and using your own imagination sometimes.
Right, and especially because the sequel takes place, I want to say, like a year later, and you do learn more. You learn more about some of the characters that you saw in the first game. You learn more about some of these cultures. It was a good move in terms of making this story better, but it also left them more to work with when it came time for the sequel.
Yeah, just kind of like able to flesh it out a little bit more. I mean, I've not yet played the sequel, so I can't really comment on anything that goes on in there.
Right. I'm not going to say any more than that. Just that it's another game in Spira. You learn more about Spira.
One of the big kind of like elephants in the room that we need to address: Tidus or Tidus?
Okay, so I say Tidus. Kingdom Hearts says Tidus, and I don't believe them.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I mean, Tidus makes sense because he's got affinity with water and stuff like that. So Tide, but it is impressive how you can have a fully voice acted game for 60 odd hours with no one actually uttering his name out loud.
Right. Which I feel like, I know, being able to rename your characters has been part of the series from the beginning. But I feel like they didn't need to hold on to that element, because if they weren't going to let you rename everyone, they should have just not let you rename him, because then they like you said, they have to spend 60 hours doing backflips to not say his name. But yeah, I say Tidus because it just, to me, it sounds better.
Yeah, it rolls off the tongue a little bit easier than Tidus.
I guess we should talk a little bit about the side content. What all did you do for the side content?
So I did the optional summons, which we've discussed. I got all of them. I unlocked the monster arena, but I couldn't actually do any of the fights because, I guess I didn't have like the right amount of upgrades or gear or etc. So I wasn't really able to progress in that. I did progress into the Omega Dungeon, but I wasn't able to finish it. I did get pretty far in, with some judicious use of Yojimbo, just obliterating some of the bosses.
Right.
But yeah, I wasn't able to complete that. Like, mostly, I stuck more or less to the story. I did try and get all of the Albert primers, which kind of like translate a lot of the Albert writing that you find. And I was very pissed off that I missed one of them, and it's the one you can't go back and get.
The one on the boat?
No, it's the one on the Albert home.
Oh, right.
Which stops existing at some point, and you can't go back and get it. So I have on my save file all of them but one.
I want to say there's one on the Albed ship in the beginning.
Yeah, when you first get captured.
That you can miss.
I believe you can miss that, yes.
But yeah, I don't think I got them all when I played all the way through originally. I know on my more recent playthrough, I was making a concerted effort to find all of them, and I think don't quote me on this, but I believe your Albed Primer progress can actually transfer from 10 to 10-2. I'm not 100% on that,
Hmm.
but I believe that is possible. I know you can carry them over with a New Game Plus.
I mean, I would go back and get it with a New Game Plus, but it is like 2/3 of the way into the game.
Right. It's like, do you want to go all the way
Just for
through?
that, no.
Right. Um, so, in terms of the ultimate weapons, did you get anything related to those?
No, no. I got some of the weapons that turn into the ultimate weapons.
Okay.
Um, Whichever one it was that you have to go around chasing butterflies in
Hmm.
the forest, or avoiding butterflies rather. Um, I got that one. Um, I believe there's another one. I'm sure I got one more.
Hmm.
Um, but it isn't something I kind of like went out of my way to do because I wasn't about to dodge 200 lightning bolts, or win a chocobo race in 0 seconds.
Or do enough blitzball to get wakas?
Oh God, no! I did. I did the one blitzball match that you have to do,
Hmm.
and then I didn't touch it again because I
So,
hated it.
and so uh, I'll come back to blitzball in a second, but I actually did when I played through originally. I did go through everything to get all of the ultimate weapons, and holy crap, it is tough. I mean the 200 consecutive dodges is it's tough, but it's mostly time consuming. The butterflies is pretty simple to do. The chocobo one is a nightmare. Um, I think orange is pretty easy because it's just capturing a certain number of creatures. Um, and then there's the village of the cactars thing for Riku's. I think that was pretty simple to get, but I definitely, you know, I definitely don't judge anyone if they haven't done the ultimate weapons because, like, it's one thing in a game like Seven where they're there to be found and you only get actually handed one of them, but the hoops you have to jump through for this because you have to number one get the crest for each one out of a chest and then get the sigil from whatever the challenge thing is, and they are just unreasonably difficult. So I definitely don't. I'm never surprised when someone says they didn't bother.
Yeah, I
As
mean
far as
that is part of a large part of like a lot of Final Fantasy games is there is kind of like stuff that's considered end game and
right,
hardcore, but they keep that stuff kind of like optional.
right, which you know, I feel like making the ultimate weapons optional is fine. I think they should be easier to get.
Yeah.
Um, Now, as far as Blitzball, um, I actually really like Blitzball. Um, I have actually, I know there's at least one time that I played this game and got through the one match in the story, and then immediately played so much Blitzball that I ran out of money because I kept having to renew contracts, and uh, that ended up kind of screwing myself over in the main game. Um, but yeah, I've done so much blitzball. I have, uh, there have been times where I got I got to the end of the game and just kept playing Blitzball, just trying to get all the abilities, trying to, make the best team possible. I think it's a lot of fun, but it's definitely not for everybody. Like, not everyone is going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I just avoided it as much as possible. Just I can see why a lot of people like it. You've got that competitive element, and people have been asking for it in Final Fantasy 14 for ages. Hopefully it will never happen.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know that it would work in 14.
Mm.
Like, Chocobo racing, yes, that works. I don't know that Blitzball would work because Blitzball was an entirely separate control system, and I don't think 14 ever deviates that hard from your basic controls and your basic movement.
Generally, yeah.
So yeah, I honestly, like, it would be cool. I don't think it'll work in 14. What did you think about the monsters? Because there's a lot of creativity with the monsters in this one.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it's a game that Tetsuya Nomura was involved in, so you're always going to have fantastic looking
Yes
monsters and stuff like that. Yeah, there was kind of like a massive variety of mostly monsters that have appeared in previous Final Fantasy games.
Right.
I think they really took the time with this being the debut of the PS2, debut of the series on the PS2, to really get them looking fantastic. Like the models of all of them are fantastic, even down to kind of like the wasps and stuff you've seen a million times, like the Ochus, and
right.
They're all very colourful. I mean, the whole game is really colourful.
Oh
yeah, I think in terms of design, they did like a fantastic job.
And I really like that they had a very easy to understand system of, okay, this has a hard shell, so you need a piercing weapon. This is a quick enemy, so you need someone with high agility. This one is, and the magic weaknesses and resistances and everything. Like, I think all of that was really well done and done in such a way that it was easy for new players to understand.
Yeah, and another one of those as well. Like once I found out that I could heal the undead to death, I love that. I just put Yuna front and center, and she just healed them all to death.
Now that is that is a Final Fantasy staple. That
oh yeah, even back in the first game, I believe you can defeat undead with Holy Magic.
Yeah, you just hit stuff with Holy. But yeah, and I like you get the brief tutorials when you first get your other characters being like, hey, I'm good at this one. Hey, I'm good at this one. It feels natural, but it's also does a good job of explaining it, and you get it. Like, as soon as you go through those, you understand these base concepts. And there are some, enemies that are more complicated, but having that good foundation, I think was a large part of why this combat system was so good.
Yeah, and it's like you go into a battle, you see what like type of enemies they are, and you immediately know, right, I need this character, this character, this character.
Right. And then the strategy becomes, okay, if I want to have everyone get experience, what is everyone else going to do? And
I mostly just use Tidus to cast haste on everyone.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I had to like force myself to use Lulu at like later parts of the game, because once you can go into other people's sphere grids, I made Lulu obsolete because I moved Yuna into Lulu's sphere grid, teach her like her most powerful spells, and then I barely ever use Lulu.
Well, yeah, because Yuna also has ridiculously high magic stats.
Mm.
So
I use Riku a lot as well.
Ri-
She's really good.
Riku is one of those that is very, very good if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I always used her against the machines.
Because the mix overdrive is like it's potentially one of the best ones, but you have to know what you're doing. Which
Yeah.
the strategy guide comes with a chart for what to do. At least if you got it new. But um, yeah, Riku can be very powerful if you build her right. And stealing, bribing, those are all like, I mean, even into the late and end game, those are useful.
I remember using Riku's Overdrive mainly as a massive heal
Hmm.
because you use like two potions together, it kind of like will heal everyone.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the strengths of it is it's so versatile. You can do so much with it that it's just it's a great thing to have, and it does get complicated, but it also can be a huge benefit if you know what you're doing.
The story of the game, I mean, we've talked a lot about different gameplay aspects and how the game looks and sounds and stuff like that, but the story of the game is fantastic as well. Um, Despite the fact that the first time I had the story explained to me by a friend was in the words travel across the world to convince your dad to stop being a fish, which is what the game is about, more or less. But so essentially, you are playing as this like teenage blitzball star, and you get pulled into another world, basically. And you've always had this kind of like rocky relationship with your dad, and you get pulled into the world by one of your dad's friends, Oron, and it really is like a fish out of water kind of story. He doesn't know what's going on. He talks about where he came from, this place called Xanakind, and everyone is kind of like saying, "Well, Xanakind hasn't existed for a really, really long time."
And they gasp in horror because Xanarkand is like considered a holy place and it's blasphemous to go there.
And there's a reason it's considered a holy place as well. Basically, well, we'll get to that, but he he eventually meets up with this summoner called Yuna, and she's going on this quest to kind of like gain all the summons and go and fight Sin. And all of her bodyguards come along, Waka, Lulu. You eventually meet up with Riku as well. Oron's there,
Kamari.
and you go like just on this journey to kind of like find all these summons, and you are essentially like one of Yuna's bodyguards, and you just develop this really, really deep sense of camaraderie with all the people that you're traveling with. Um, and like I said, the story gets very emotional. Like it turns out that Titus hasn't really time traveled. It's kind of difficult to explain it, but there are these kind of like dreamers in old Xanakind, and they, through the power of their dreams, are kind of like maybe you can explain it better than me.
So they're basically maintaining Xanarkand as it was. It's so actually a decent, if kind of off the wall analogy is the in the Matrix films, the concept that's explained to the beginning of the or in the first movie is the machines are maintaining a digital version of the world as it existed at the end of the 20th century. Um, and that's kind of what the Faith are doing. They have this version of Xanarkand that existed, and their dreams are kind of maintaining that. And it's like you said, it's not easy to explain.
Yeah. But essentially they are like maintaining that old Anakin and in turn maintaining Titus.
Mhm.
And partway through the game, Yuna reveals that this quest to kind of like go and find all these summons and defeat sins will end in her death. That is what the quest entails. And she's kind of like fully accepted this, and Titus is kind of like really pissed off about this. He wants to stop it. He wants to find a way to kind of like defeat Sin without Yuna having to die. It turns out that Sin is, or part of Sin's personality is actually his dad, Jecht. What's a better way to describe that?
So the way sin basically works in this world is it is this, this huge, basically reality warping monster. Like it, is majorly disruptive to anything that comes into contact with it. Fiends are basically, there's a certain subset of fiends that just spawn off of it, and summoners gather these aeons and go on a quest to Xanarkand to defeat it. And when you arrive at Xanarkand, you meet with the Lady Unalesca, who is one of the ancient, like, I guess, founders of the religion, I suppose, but one of their holy figures. And she turns one of the summoner's guardians into the final Aeon, and through this process they defeat Sin. The summoner is killed in the process, and the final Aeon becomes Sin after a certain amount of time, and that's why it's a cycle of rebirth, because it always comes back as Sin.
Yeah, and the reason that Jecht became this final summoner is because him and Auron were guardians to Yuna's father, Braska, who, like, the previous time someone came, the previous time that Sin came along, he did this quest to go and defeat it, and that is why Jecht ended up becoming Sin.
Right. And when a summoner defeats Sin, they're thereafter referred to as a high summoner, and that carries a lot of weight with it. So one of the main things Yuna grapples with throughout the game is she is the daughter of the previous high summoner, and has become a summoner herself, and is in very much the largest shadow it's possible to cast in this world. And there's all kind of things that come from that. We see, Yuna's thoughts on this. We see how other people treat her because of this.
Yeah, you see how people treat her because of that. Like in the context of like the people who are around her. But we have kind of like Titus and Riku, who are kind of like outside of her inner circle, and don't really know what's really going on, that kind of like provide our perspective of kind of like why is this happening, why does she have to go and die,
Right.
Stuff like that.
Right, because Titus isn't from this, ostensibly he's not from this world, and Riku is an Albed who have a completely separate culture, so she doesn't understand the summoner and guardian structure. So we get a lot of that, and you'll see other summoners along the way will be, some of them very respectful to Yuna because of her father. Some of them are very derisive toward her because it's, oh, you're just gonna try to fill your father's shoes, but you probably won't succeed.
Some of them try to marry her.
Yeah, some of them try to marry her. Some of them try to murder her. Again, it's very in depth, and you go through a whole lot of things. I think one of the biggest things with the summoners, we mentioned Yunalesca. I finally remembered the reason she is so important is she was the first summoner to defeat Sin.
Yeah.
But when someone dies, they summoners perform a rite called ascending, which sends them to this version of the afterlife, which is called the far plane. But Yunalesca was not sent because there was no one there to send her, which is why she's still in Zanarkand performing this task.
Should point out as well the actual ritual of the sending is really quite beautiful. Like, Yuna performs like a sending dance.
Yeah.
And the person who they are sending, they kind of like start to dissipate into kind of like sparkles. And it's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, it was one of the pre-rendered cutscenes in the original, and it like even back then it looked amazing. Like it was a very, very good cutscene.
Yeah, because Sin attacks a beach, a lot of people are killed, and Yuna does this like massive sending to send them all onto the afterlife.
Because it just happens that they're nearby and she's the only summoner. And if someone dies and is not sent, they become a fiend, which are the regular rank and file monsters you fight the whole game. So people are very concerned about their loved ones becoming fiends if they're not sent. There are exceptions. Like I said, Yunalesca was not sent. And we come to find out Orin actually originally died when Lord Braska died, and basically everything was revealed. He tried to attack Yunalesca and was killed, and of course there was no one to send him. I don't remember if we ever find out how he manages to hang on.
I'm not sure, but it is the start of that very emotional cutscene right at the end of the game.
Yeah.
That I can't get through dry-eyed, because basically you have the final battle. First against Jekt, and then against
God itself.
Yes. First off, you have the emotional brunt of having to kill every single one of your summons one by one.
Yes.
And then the end of the battle, Yuna starts performing the sending. Oron starts to sparkle, and he just says, "Don't stop." That is the point that gets me. Like from there onwards, yeah, very, very emotional cutscenes. So Oron ends up getting sent, and he disappears. And because of how they kind of like defeated Sin, they used up all the powers of the Dreamers in Zanarkand, which means that their kind of like version of Zanarkand that they were keeping active is disappearing. Tidus is disappearing. And there's this really emotional exchange where Tidus says like he's got to go now, and Yuna says, "I love you." Even now I'm getting emotional, but it's probably one of the most emotional cutscenes I've ever seen in a video game.
And one of the things I love, which I don't see mentioned a lot, is at the end, Tidus jumps off of the airship, and you just see him reach out and tag a hand that I think is Jekt's.
Yeah, it is. He like high fives him in the air.
Yeah. That one hit me because you watch him have this rocky relationship with his father. He hates his father for so long, and then you just get that very small moment at the end. I loved that.
Even after that scene, it doesn't stop emotionally gut punching you
Yeah.
because previously in the game, Yuna and Tidus have a conversation where they say if ever you can't find like me, do this whistle, and I'll know that you're there and I'll come. So at the end of this cutscene, we get a time jump of like I think several days later or however long it is, and it's Yuna on a dock doing that whistle into the sea, and that is very emotional.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too much into what happens to the world after because that's getting into 10-2. But I mean, suffice to say, everything has changed because, like, this this religion that they've been living with for 1,000 years was basically proven to be a lie. So the entire world now has to, recover from the shock of that.
Yeah, I mean, I am looking forward to getting into that at some point and like seeing the continuation of that story.
Yeah, I can tell you, it is fantastic. Please play it with the strategy guide.
Does it get pretty obtuse?
Well, so it's more that the game has an actual in-game percentage of completion. And to see absolutely everything, you have to hit 100%. And the game is divided into 5 acts, and there are decisions you can make in early acts. I think there's a decision in Act 2 that you can make that can lock you out of 100% completion. So please, when you play this, get the strategy guide or a walkthrough or something.
I have the book.
Okay. Because, it's one that the secret ending, it is a big deal. So it's always difficult to 100% a game. This is one that you kind of need to.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe we could, get into that next year.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can find an excuse to work more Final Fantasy into this. But yeah, I mean, like you said, the story really is a roller coaster because, you've got these high drama moments, especially at the end of the game. You've got comedy moments. You've got the calm periods of, everyone just kind of, existing in a place before you move on to the next one.
I mean, we've barely even mentioned Seymour. Like he's almost inconsequential to the story.
Right. He's this huge bad guy throughout the game, and he just, in the grand scheme of things, does not matter. And he has like one of the most in-depth stories of any character in the game.
He's got one of the most in-depth haircuts as well.
Oh yes.
The first moment I saw him, I thought that's got to be a bad guy. No good guy's going to have that haircut.
Right.
But the summon anima is like explicitly tied to him because it's actually a manifestation of his dead mother that he was locked up with. Very, very sad story again.
Yeah.
But because he was kind of like half Guado and half human, he was kind of like shunned and like locked away with his mother, and she died, and like his grief turned her body into anima essentially. Anima is this terrifying, like shroud wrapped, fanged, chained up beast.
Right.
Fantastic design on that. Again by Nomura, I believe.
Oh, it has to be with that many chains.
Mm. Yeah, because I remember the it appears in Final Fantasy XIV, and they did mention at the time that that Nomura was on hand to kind of like oversee the design of that.
Anima is one of those things that you see it for the first time, it leaves an impression.
Yeah.
And then when you find out later that you can summon anima, it's like, oh dang, I can use that thing.
Mhm.
Didn't one of the Fal'Cie early in 13 look like anima?
I don't remember. It's been a long time since I played 13.
I think that
Before 10.
I think that first Fal'Cie, the one that actually brands them all, looks kind of similar to anima. Not like exactly, but close enough that it reminds you.
And if you want to know what a Fal'Cie is, fuck you. You've got to read up on it.
Yeah,
Open the codex.
You gotta wait. I don't know, however many years until we cover that.
Yeah.
Just like, find an online version of the codex and then put that in the show notes. But it's, I don't even know what else to say. I mean, it's
a remarkable game. And if you even have like a passing interest in RPGs, definitely this is one to check out. It is so easy to get a hold of. It's on everything. If you've got a PS2, it's really cheap on PS2.
Oh yeah, you can get it for like $5.
You can get it on PS3, PS4, Switch, PC. It is available everywhere.
Yeah.
And the HD remaster comes with 10.2 as well.
Yes. And it also comes with some, I think there's a cinematic that takes place between the two.
Yeah, called Eternal Calm.
Yes.
In which Lulu is pregnant by Waka, even though they had zero chemistry in the first game. They eventually became a couple.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
And I actually haven't seen the cinematic, but I knew that from the sequel, which is still, like, even back then I was like, that's weird.
It'll be on YouTube, I bet. If you type in Eternal Calm.
I have every version of the.
All right.
Well, I have every PlayStation version of the HD remaster. Because one of the fun things about the HD remaster and the PlayStation version specifically, the Vita, PS3, and PS4, is they actually have cross-save functionality. It's kind of a weird setup, but it's basically you upload your saves from whatever system you're on and can download them from any of the other two systems and basically play this game anywhere.
I didn't know that. I mean, I've only got it on PS4, so I don't have the other ones.
Yeah, I've got all three of the PlayStation ones. I don't think that feature is in the other versions, but that is a feature of the PlayStation versions, is that you can transfer the saves between systems for both this and 10.2. So for someone like me who was collecting things as they came out, it's a handy system. Then of course there's also things like the Switch version and the Steam Deck, which make it both home and portable. But yeah, I absolutely recommend people check this out. I mean, I think even people that don't like traditional fantasy could get something out of this, because this isn't you're not dealing with monarchies and the feudal system and all of that.
No, it's not a traditional fantasy. I mean, it's very much, well, it's a Final Fantasy game, so you've got all the mechanical cyberpunky kind of stuff. I mean, this is less cyberpunky, but it does still have like all the mechanical stuff, and yeah.
So like I would really recommend this, to anyone that can handle playing a 40 to 60 hour game, and then if you do all of the extras, you'll go, you could go way beyond that. But yeah, I definitely recommend this game. like we said, it's super easy to get a hold of. Yeah, that's really all I have left to say is just play this game, because it's, I think it's hard to argue. Like, I don't know of anyone that would argue that this is a bad game. At least I haven't met anyone that does.
No. And if you have played this and haven't played 13, check it out. You would be surprised at how similar they are.
Yeah.
Although you do have a very sulky protagonist and a really annoying child that you got to deal with in 13. Yeah.
That's one of the main concessions I give, is that the characters in 13, several of them are much more annoying than the ones in 10.
Everyone's kind of like happy and jolly in 10.
Yeah.
Apart from Kamari, who that's just not in his nature to show emotion, really. But
Kamari's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've been going on and on, but like, I think we've about covered it. I mean, we could get into things like the development and whatnot, but it's, I don't think that's really necessary. I think we can just leave it here, because the end verdict: play this game. It's good. So we'll just take a break and come back and finish up.
Okay.
All right, so that was our, I will say, first episode focusing on Final Fantasy, because I'm sure we will come back to this.
Oh, yeah.
As long as there's nobody to stop us. I think unless you are very, very opposed to RPGs in general, the Final Fantasy series is absolutely worth checking out. Not just the main games, but the side games also have a lot of quality content. And, odds are there will be something that everyone can enjoy in this series.
Yeah, and even if you're kind of like massively into MMOs, Final Fantasy 14 is like one of the most popular MMOs out there at the minute, and it is just huge and fantastic. And
has a free trial up to level 60, including the award-winning Heavensward expansion.
Yes.
So that's our first Final Fantasy episode. We will come back to this topic, but until next time, we'll just say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Ha ha ha!